My family thought they could spend our entire vacation judging my body and criticizing my every move. They were dead wrong. They mistook my silence for acceptance, my strained smiles for agreement, and assumed my presence was guaranteed, no matter how much they chipped away at me. They really believed they had the right to dictate how I should exist in my own skin, especially when we were all trapped together in the beautiful, unforgiving wilderness. This is the story of how one single text message turned their dream vacation into a nightmare, and how I finally took my power back. For as long as I can remember, my family has run on a very specific, unspoken hierarchy. At the very top, my parents. My dad is a man who believes discipline and rigor solve all of life's problems, even the ones that don't actually exist. Then there's my mother, the architect of our family's image, a woman for whom appearances aren't just everything, they're the only thing. Right below them, practically glowing in their reflected glory, is my older sister, Amelia, the golden child. She was the athlete, the scholar, the one who was effortlessly thin, effortlessly successful, and effortlessly cruel, in the way only a sibling who knows all your weak spots can be. And then there was me. If Amelia was the sun, I was the inconvenient little cloud that occasionally blocked her light. I was the scapegoat, the project, the one who was always full of potential, if I would just apply myself. In my family's language, applying myself had one very specific meaning: lose weight. My entire personality, my achievements, my kindness, my humor, all of it was filtered through the lens of my body. Every family dinner was a minefield of pointed advice. Every holiday was an opportunity for them to express their concern, which always sounded a lot like disgust. So, when my mom announced our annual family vacation was a 2-week trip to a remote mountainous national park, a cold dread settled in my stomach. This wasn't a vacation. It was a re education camp with pine trees. Amelia was thrilled, of course. She immediately started rattling on about all the 14-mile hikes and rock climbing she planned to conquer. My dad just nodded in approval, already picturing the perfect family photo album with his perfect athletic family. I tried to gently suggest alternatives. "Hey, I saw there is a town nearby with some amazing art galleries," I offered one evening. My mother just smiled that tight, brittle smile of hers. "That is nice, dear, but this trip is about embracing the outdoors, getting some fresh air. It'll be good for you." The subtext, as always, was screaming at me. "It'll be good for you" was code for maybe all this forced exercise will finally fix you. I saw my sister shoot a look at my mom, a tiny, almost invisible smirk. They were a team, and this trip was their championship game. I was just the obstacle. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, this vacation was going to be my personal hell. And I knew I was expected to just smile and take it. That's what I always did. The vacation started before we even left the driveway. As I was loading my suitcase filled with comfy clothes, I actually liked my mother walked over. "Did you remember to pack those new athletic leggings I bought you?" she asked, her voice all light and airy. "They're much more suitable for hiking." I had, in fact, left them folded in my drawer. They were a size too small, a motivational purchase on her part, and wearing them felt like being squeezed by a boa constrictor of judgment. "I have clothes, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice even. She sighed, a puff of disappointed air. "Well, I just want you to be comfortable," she said, turning away. We both knew she meant the exact opposite. She wanted me to be uncomfortable. She believed discomfort was the only path to change. The 6-hour car ride as a marathon of curated jabs. My father went on about the importance of physical endurance. Amelia loudly detailed her workout regimen and diet plan, occasionally pausing to ask, "You should really try intermittent fasting, you know. It's done wonders for my energy levels." I just stared out the window, counting the miles and clenching my jaw. Every word was meant to remind me of my place. I was the before picture. They were the after. When we finally arrived at the sprawling, beautiful cabin, it was worse than I'd imagined. Perched on the edge of a steep hill, with breathtaking views of the peaks we were apparently about to climb. There was no easing into it. Before the bags were even all inside, my dad clapped his hands together and announced, "All right, let's not waste daylight. There's a lovely 5-mile loop just up the trail. Perfect way to stretch our legs." My heart just sank. A 5-mile loop here was not a casual stroll. I felt that familiar burn of anxiety in my chest. This was it. The performance was starting, and I was the star attraction. I looked at my mom and sister, and they were already changing into matching high-performance gear, beaming. There was no option to say no. Saying no would be admitting failure before the games even began. It would break the unspoken contract. They get to judge, and I have to pretend to be a willing participant in my own humiliation. So I pulled on my sneakers, took a deep breath, and prepared to be left behind. That first hike set the tone for the whole trip. Within 10 minutes, they were a good 50 yards ahead. My dad, a man in his late 50s, moved over the rocky ground like a mountain goat. Amelia was right beside him, her ponytail bouncing. My mother was just a few steps behind them, a tight little unit of superiority. They didn't slow down. Instead, they'd stop every quarter mile, turn around, and watch me struggle to catch up. Their encouragement was anything but. "Come on, you can do it. Just pick up the pace a little," my sister would yell, her voice dripping with impatience. My dad would just stand there, hands on his hips, letting out a deep, dramatic sigh every time I had to stop to catch my breath. It was pure humiliation theater. My lungs burned, my legs ached, and my spirit was just deflating. When I finally caught up to them at an overlook, breathless and sweating, my mother handed me a water bottle and said, "See? You feel better when you push yourself." I didn't feel better. I felt exhausted and, more than anything, completely invisible. Dinner that night was the next level of the ordeal. We went to a rustic lodge, and I was actually looking forward to a real meal after the afternoon's torture. The moment I opened my menu, the interrogation began. "The bison burger sounds good," I said, mostly to myself. From across the table, my mother immediately chimed in. "Are you sure, honey? That is very heavy. Look, they have a beautiful grilled chicken salad. She didn't have to say the words for you." They hung in the air, deafening. Amelia smirked into her waiter glass. I ordered the sad, limp salad and ate it in silence, while my father and sister raved about their juicy steaks. But the absolute lowest point, the moment that is burned into my memory forever, came 2 days later. My mother had booked a horseback riding tour in a supposed act of generosity. I love horses, and for a second, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was something we could all enjoy at the same pace. I was so wrong. When we got to the stables, the guide, a weathered guy with kind eyes, started assigning horses. He pointed out a gentle-looking mare for my mom, a spirited one for my sister. When he got to me, He paused. He looked me up and down, then glanced at my father, who was watching intently. For this lady, the guide boomed across the yard. I think we'll need Big John. He's our sturdiest mount. Good, strong back. The world just stopped. Big John, our sturdiest mount. My face burned with a shame so hot it felt like it could peel my skin off. I looked at my family, just praying for one of them to step in, to say, "That's rude," or "She'll be fine." Nothing. My sister turned away, hiding a laugh behind her hand. My father just nodded grimly at the guide like, "Good call." And my mother, she just gave me a tight, sympathetic-looking frown and said, "Well, we have to think of the animal's comfort, don't we?" And there it was, the final nail in the coffin of my dignity. In that moment, I wasn't her daughter. I was a logistics problem, a weight to be managed, the fat girl on the fat horse. That evening, back at the cabin, I just shut down. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling a soul-deep weariness that had nothing to do with hiking. I had spent years silently enduring their judgment, thinking that if I was just a good sport, one day they'd finally see me. But I realized, with devastating clarity, they would never see me. They didn't want to. They saw a project, a disappointment. And lying there, I knew I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't spend one more minute of this trip trying to win a game that was rigged against me. The silent endurance was over. Later that evening, the family was gathered in the living room, poring over maps like generals planning an assault. My father, his voice booming with excitement, made the grand announcement. Tomorrow is the day we are tackling the summit trail. It is a 10-mile trek, a real challenge, but the views from the top are life-changing. Amelia clapped her hands. Yes, I've been waiting for this one. My mother looked at me, her expression a mix of challenge and pity. An early night for you, I think, she said. You'll need all the rest you can get. In the past, I would be just nodded, that familiar knot of dread twisting in my stomach. But something in me had snapped after the horse incident. The part of me willing to absorb their judgment for a fragile peace had finally shattered. Lying in bed earlier, I felt the shame. But then something else bubbled up through the misery. A white-hot, cleansing anger. And with that anger came clarity. I was not the problem. My body was not the problem. Their cruelty was the problem. While they plotted their glorious ascent, I quietly slipped back to my room. I pulled out my laptop, but I wasn't looking at hiking trails. I was searching for that nearby town, the one with the art galleries. And I found something even better. A sprawling botanical garden, famous for its serene Japanese exhibit. It was a place of peace, of solitude. It was my kind of place. An idea, bold and terrifying and liberating, bloomed in my mind. I picked up my phone, my hands shaking with adrenaline. I knew this would cause an explosion. I knew it would be seen as an act of war. But this wasn't about hurting them. It was about saving myself. I opened a group chat with my parents and Amelia. I took a deep, shuddering breath, and I started to type. The words were calm and measured, each one a brick in the new boundary I was building around myself. I won't be joining you for the hike tomorrow, or for any other planned group activities for the rest of the trip. The constant judgment about my body and my pace has made this vacation emotionally unbearable. I'm done trying to keep up with expectations that are designed to make me feel bad about myself. I won't participate in it anymore. I will be spending the rest of my time here doing things I actually enjoy. I'll see you back at the cabin in the evenings. I read it over. It was perfect, honest. It didn't accuse, it just stated a fact and outlined a consequence. I held my breath and pressed send. And then I did the most freeing thing I have ever done. I turned my phone completely off. Not on silent, off. The screen went black, and in the sudden profound silence, I felt the crushing weight of their expectations lift off my shoulders for the first time in my life. I felt free. I woke up the next morning before the sun. The cabin was still, quiet. I dressed quickly, not in hiking gear, but in a comfortable dress and sandals. I grabbed my purse, my keys, and a book. I didn't leave a note. The text said everything. Slipping out the front door into the cool dawn felt like a jailbreak. I got into my car and drove away without a single look back. The 45-minute drive to the botanical garden was the most peaceful drive of my life. I played my own music. I stopped at a little bakery for a coffee and a pastry, a real one, full of sugar and joy, and ate it without a single voice in my head telling me I shouldn't. The botanical garden was a sanctuary. I spent hours there. I walked through the Japanese garden, sat by the koi pond, and just watched the fish. I found a secluded bench under a huge weeping willow and read for 2 straight hours. I wasn't climbing a mountain, wasn't gasping for air. I was just being. It was glorious. Around 3 p.m., driven by morbid curiosity, I turned my phone back on. It exploded. Dozens of missed calls, a string of texts that chronicled their emotional breakdown in real time. First came the anger. From my mother, "Where are you? Your father is furious. How dare you pull a stunt like this and embarrass us?" From my sister, "Wow, way to be a drama queen and ruin the trip for everyone." Then, as the hours passed with no response, the tone shifted to manipulation. From my mother again, "We're getting very worried. Please just answer. Are you okay?" A classic move. Frame her control as concern. Finally, bargaining. A rare text from my dad. "Okay, look, we get it. If you come back now, we can skip the hike. We'll do something easier. Just come back." I read them all, and I felt nothing. Their power was gone, their anger, their fake concern, their desperate attempts to regain control. It was all just noise from a distant room. I put my phone on silent and put it back in my bag. I was not engaging. When I drove back that afternoon, I was nervous, but it was a different kind. Not fear, but anticipation. I walked in the door, and the three of them were sitting in the living room in a thick, suffocating silence. The hike clearly hadn't happened. Their hiking boots were still clean by the door. My father stood up, his face a mask of thunder. My mother just stared at me, her eyes burning with a rage she couldn't voice. Amelia wouldn't even look at me. The power dynamic in the room had been completely rewired. For my entire life, I had walked on eggshells around them. Now they were walking on eggshells around me. My refusal to play the victim had turned me into an unpredictable force. It had forced them for the first time to confront their own behavior, and they had no idea what to do. The silence was the loudest thing I had ever heard. The rest of that vacation was terribly, wonderfully quiet. Each morning, I'd get up and leave. I told them where I was going, not for permission, but as a statement of fact. "I'm going to check out the art galleries today. I'm heading to that little lakeside town." They never asked to join. I never invited them. Some days they went on their grueling hikes, just the three of them. When they came back, they were less triumphant, more subdued. Their perfect family unit felt incomplete, and my absence was a glaring hole in their story. Other days, they just sat around the cabin, stewing. Their grand vacation was in shambles, not because of what I did, but because they couldn't enjoy it without their scapegoat. Their fun, it turned out, depended on my misery. The car ride home was almost 10 hours of near total silence, but for me, it was peaceful. I wasn't frantically trying to smooth things over or apologize. I just watched the mountains recede in the rearview mirror, feeling a profound sense of release. In the months that followed, our relationship found a new fragile footing. This wasn't a movie ending with a big tearful hug. It was real. They were cautious around me, wary. The constant comments about my food, my clothes, my body, they stopped. Not because they had a magical change of heart, but because they were afraid. They now knew there was a line. They knew that if they pushed too hard, I wouldn't just take it. I would walk away. I had taken away their most powerful weapon, my own desperate need for their approval. That one text message didn't just save a vacation, it saved me. It taught me that the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about refusing to play the game. The ultimate victory wasn't ruining their trip. It was reclaiming my own peace. They're still my family, but I am no longer their victim. I built a boundary, not of anger, but of self-respect, and I've been living behind it, happily and peacefully, ever since. It took me a long time to learn that you can't force people to see your worth. You can only decide that you are worthy and then act like it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for yourself is to quietly and firmly walk away. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a like and consider subscribing. I would genuinely love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had a moment where you had to draw a line in the sand with your family? Share your story below. You never know who needs to hear it. In the end, it was never about the hike or the horse or the salad. It was about control. And by letting go of the need for their approval, I finally gained control over the one thing that truly mattered, my own happiness. Thank you for watching.